Got it, here's your HFY story. They brought a hunter into class. The human Deathworlder left everyone speechless. The Institute for Interstellar Harmony prided itself on being the safest academic environment in the galaxy. It had to be. Its student body consisted of species from worlds so fragile that a strong breeze could bruise them, and from worlds so hostile that the rest of the galaxy feared to even visit. That was why the predatory behavior observation program was always carefully monitored. Students were invited to study the psychology of dangerous lifeforms in a safe, controlled setting. Today's subject was a hunter, a living predator, the kind most students had only read about in hazard manuals. The creature stood at the front of the classroom, flanked by 2 Institute security drones. It was lean, scarred, and gave off an energy that made every herbivore's fur prickle and every avian's feathers puff. Its eyes scanned the room with slow precision, like it was already mapping the fastest routes to each of them. Professor Thurnick, a cautious insectoid from Valka Prime, clicked his mandibles nervously. Class, he began. This is a human, a sapient apex predator from a Category 7 death world. Gasps filled the room. Humans, the professor continued, are remarkable in that they have no fangs worth mentioning. Their claws are blunt, and they lack natural armor. Yet they are considered one of the most efficient hunters in the galaxy. A student, a timid Zyril with translucent skin, raised a trembling tendril. If they are fragile, then how are they so feared? The human smiled faintly, and the smile was somehow worse than a snarl. Because, the human said, voice calm, we don't need to be built for killing, we think our way to it. The room went silent. They began answering questions, each response more unsettling than the last. How do you hunt? Persistence. We run you down until your legs give out. Could take hours, could take days. We don't stop. What do you eat? Anything. Plants, animals, things that would poison you. We cook the toxins out. And if we're desperate, we've got stories you don't want to hear. How do you fight? We make tools. We turn rocks into blades, sticks into spears, the planet itself into a weapon. By now, several students had fainted. Then a young avian in the back, feathers trembling, asked the question everyone avoided. If you are so dangerous, why come here? Why not conquer us? The human's gaze softened. Because where I'm from, the most dangerous thing isn't the world, it's loneliness. We hunt to survive, but we live to connect. We're here to learn. The class sat frozen, unsure if they'd just been comforted or warned. The human's words lingered in the air like the scent of ozone before a storm. As they left, one thought burned in every mind. If that was a calm human, what did an angry one look like? If you want, I can also make a more intense and darker version of this scene where the human demonstrates their hunting instinct in class rather than just explaining it. That would really crank up the HFY vibe. Alright, here's the continuation, where the calm lesson turns into a live demonstration. Part 2, the demonstration. The next class was supposed to be a standard follow-up, review notes, discuss impressions, write reflection essays, but when the students filed in, the professor was already waiting with an uneasy twitch in his mandibles, and the human stood beside him, no drones this time. Today, Professor Thurnick said, we will explore applied predatory psychology. The human has volunteered to demonstrate. The room's air recyclers seemed to run a little louder. The human took 3 slow steps forward. Last time, they said, I told you how we hunt. Talking doesn't make you understand. You need to feel it. They reached into a pouch at their hip and produced a strip of dark fabric. Without asking, they tied it over their eyes. This will be fair, they said, voice calm. I won't see you. Gasps. Some students already edging toward the exit. You'll have 30 seconds to hide anywhere in this room. The human continued. When I say begin, I will find you, using only sound, scent, and instinct. The professor started to object, but the human's head turned slightly, and that look silenced him faster than any reprimand. Begin. The room erupted into chaos, chairs scraping, claws clicking on the floor, wings beating frantically. The human just stood there, counting softly. 29, 28. By the time they reached 0, the classroom was silent except for the hum of ventilation. Then the human moved. No stumbling, no hesitation. They crossed the room in 3 strides and reached under a desk, hauling out the trembling Zyril who had asked the first question last week. They didn't even sniff, just knew. Next, they knelt by a stack of storage crates, knocking lightly on the side. "Nice try," they said, and a small avian scrambled out. Feathers puffed in panic. One by one, the hiding places were breached. The humans' hands were gentle, but the precision was terrifying. They always knew where to go. When the last student was found, the human untied the blindfold. Their eyes adjusted instantly, sharp and alert. "You think predators rely on sight," they said, scanning the silent room. "We don't. We read air currents, hear muscle tension, smell adrenaline. You can't hide your fear, not from us." No one spoke. The human's expression softened again, but this time, the softness didn't make them any less frightening. "That's why you should be glad we're your allies." The professor dismissed the class early. Nobody stayed to pack their bags. "I can take this one step further next, have the reason for the human's deadly skill revealed in an off-campus incident where they have to protect the students for real. That's where the HFY punch will hit hardest." Got it. Here's the next part, where the classroom lesson turns into a real HFY moment. Part 3, The Incident. 3 days after the demonstration, the students were still whispering about it in hushed tones. For most, the memory of being found so easily, blindfold or not, had lodged itself in the primal part of their minds, the part that still remembered what it was like to be prey. The human, however, seemed completely unbothered. They laughed with the cafeteria staff, carried stacks of data slates for the librarian, and even helped a terrified arachnid student repair a collapsed web. But the unease never quite left the class. It was during an off-campus field trip that the lesson became more than theory. The Institute shuttle had landed in the city of Vlar Prime for a cultural exchange tour. The group was moving through a market district when the crowd suddenly shifted, too fast, too coordinated. The human froze mid-step. Something was wrong. A faint click, metal on stone, reached their ears, swallowed by the market chatter. Then a whiff of ozone, sharp and unnatural, cut through the scent of spiced grains. Ambush. The first flash came from the rooftops, 3 figures in matte gray armor, weapons already trained. "Down," the human barked. No hesitation, no explanation. The students obeyed, more from instinct than trust, as the human surged forward. One armored attacker fired, a lance of plasma slicing the air. The human didn't dodge. They moved into it, grabbing a market stall's reinforced pole, wrenching it free, and using it to deflect the shot. The pole sizzled where the plasma struck, but the human was already charging. The first assailant went down hard, wind knocked out by a rib-cracking strike. The second tried to retreat, bad mistake. The human tackled them, disarming them in a blur, and hurled the stolen weapon toward the third. The blast didn't kill, but it knocked the last one off balance long enough for security drones to arrive. When it was over, the human turned back to the huddled students. Their breathing was heavy but steady, eyes scanning for any lingering threat. "You okay?" they asked. No one answered at first. They were still trying to process how fast it had all happened. Finally, the young avian spoke up, voice shaking. You heard them coming." The human nodded, and smelled the weapons. Ozone's hard to miss. Professor Thurnick's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "You acted without seeing them." The human shrugged. "Where I come from, hesitation gets you killed. You read the signs. You move. You end it." As the market resumed its bustle, the students realized something unsettling. That demonstration in the classroom had never been for fun. It had been training for them. And now they knew exactly why the galaxy feared humans. If you want, I can make the final part where the alien authorities question the human afterward, and the human explains exactly why they always assume danger is coming. That's where the full HFY philosophy would land like a gut punch. Alright, here's the final part, where the HFY philosophy gets laid bare. Part 4, Why Humans Assume Danger. The attack was over. The market square had been cordoned off. The unconscious assailants hauled away in restraints. The students were escorted back to the institute under heavy security, but the human was taken elsewhere, straight to the Vlar Prime Security Command Center. They weren't cuffed, but the room they were led into was more than secure enough. Translucent walls hummed with containment fields. An alien officer with glinting copper scales sat across from them, datapad in hand. Your intervention, the officer began, was effective. Too effective. The human tilted their head. Would you prefer I let them shoot? That is not what I mean, the officer said, tail flicking. You moved without orders. You neutralized 3 armed combatants before our drones even locked targeting. That's unnerving. The human leaned forward, resting their forearms on the table. I didn't move without orders, they said quietly. I moved because I knew what was happening. Your people wait for confirmation. Mine, we've been prey and predator both. We don't wait for the teeth to close. The officer's frill stiffened. Prey? You're apex predators. The human gave a thin smile. Only on good days. On bad days, we were small primates in tall grass, surrounded by things faster, stronger, and hungrier than us. We survived because we learned to read the world, the way the wind shifts, the silence before a pounce, the taste of the air before a storm. And we acted. They leaned back. On Earth, if you hesitated, you didn't just lose, you died. That's in our blood. So when I'm in a crowded market and the airflow changes, when a sound doesn't belong, when a smell cuts against the background, I don't think. I move. The officer was silent for a long moment. And if you're wrong? Then I look foolish, the human said. And I'd rather look foolish than watch people I'm responsible for die. The officer tapped something on the datapad, sending the human's statement into the official report. You understand, they said finally. This makes people uneasy. Good, the human replied, standing. Uneasy people stay alive. When the human returned to class the next day, no one could quite meet their eyes, not out of fear, but because they now understood exactly what it meant to have a human on their side. They hadn't just brought a hunter into class. They'd brought a guardian. And guardians, everyone realized, are only gentle until you threaten what they protect. If you want, I can now bundle all 4 parts into one full, polished HFY short story so it reads as a seamless narrative. That would make it feel like a complete piece. Alright, here's the full, polished HFY short story with all 4 parts woven together into one seamless narrative. They brought a hunter into class. The human Deathworlder left everyone speechless. The Institute for Interstellar Harmony prided itself on being the safest academic environment in the galaxy. It had to be. Its student body consisted of species from worlds so fragile that a strong breeze could bruise them, and from worlds so hostile that the rest of the galaxy feared to even visit. That was why the predatory behavior observation program was always carefully monitored. Today's subject was a hunter, a living predator, the kind most students had only read about in hazard manuals. The creature stood at the front of the classroom, flanked by 2 Institute security drones, lean, scarred, and radiating a strange intensity. It scanned the room with slow precision, as if mapping the fastest routes to each of them. Professor Thurnick, a cautious insectoid from Valka Prime, clicked his mandibles. Class, this is a human, a sapient apex predator from a Category 7 death world. Gasps rippled through the students. Humans, the professor continued, are remarkable in that they have no fangs worth mentioning, their claws are blunt, and they lack natural armor. Yet they are considered among the most efficient hunters in the galaxy. A timid Zyril with translucent skin raised a tendril. If they are fragile, then how are they so feared? The human smiled faintly, and the smile was somehow worse than a snarl. Because, they said, voice calm, we don't need to be built for killing, we think our way to it. They answered question after question, each response more unsettling. How do you hunt? Persistence. We run you down until your legs give out. Hours, days, we don't stop. What do you eat? Anything. Plants, animals, things that would poison you, we cook the toxins out. And if we're desperate, you don't want to hear those stories. How do you fight? We make tools. We turn rocks into blades, sticks into spears, the planet itself into a weapon. By the end, several students had fainted, but the most unnerving moment came when a young avian asked, if you are so dangerous, why come here? Why not conquer us? The human's gaze softened. Because where I'm from, the most dangerous thing isn't the world, it's loneliness. We hunt to survive, but we live to connect. We're here to learn. The class left uneasy. The human was calm, but everyone wondered what they'd be like angry. The demonstration. 3 days later, the students returned for a follow-up session. The professor's mandibles twitched nervously. The human stood beside him, no drones this time. Today, Thurnick said, we will explore applied predatory psychology. The human has volunteered to demonstrate. The human stepped forward, pulled a strip of dark fabric from their pouch, and tied it over their eyes. This will be fair. I won't see you. You'll have 30 seconds to hide anywhere in the room. When I say begin, I'll find you using only sound, scent, and instinct. Panic rippled through the students, but they scattered as soon as the count began. At 0, the human moved. No hesitation, no trial and error. They crossed the room in 3 strides, reached under a desk, and pulled out the trembling Zyril. Next, they knelt by a stack of crates. Nice try, they said, and a small avian scrambled out. One by one, the hiding places fell. Gentle hands, terrifying precision, blindfold or not, the human always knew. You think predators rely on sight, the human said, removing the blindfold. We don't. We read air currents, hear muscle tension, smell adrenaline. You can't hide your fear, not from us. The lesson stuck and made the class more uneasy than ever. The incident. The truth of that lesson came sooner than anyone expected. During an off-campus field trip to the city of Vlar Prime, the group was wandering a crowded market when the human suddenly froze mid-step. A faint click, metal on stone, reached their ears. Then a whiff of ozone, sharp and wrong. Ambush. Down, the human barked. Before the students could process the command, plasma fire seared the air. 3 armored figures moved in from the rooftops. The human didn't dodge, they moved into it, ripping a reinforced pole from a market stall to deflect the first blast, then charging forward. The first attacker was knocked breathless, the second disarmed and thrown aside, the third staggered by their own stolen weapon before security drones arrived. When it was over, the human turned back to the huddled group. You okay? The young avian swallowed. You heard them coming. And smelled the weapons, the human replied. Ozone's hard to miss. That's when the students realized the classroom demonstration hadn't been just a show, it had been training. Why humans assume danger. The human was taken to Vlar Prime's security command for questioning. Your intervention was effective, the copper-scaled officer said, but unnerving. You moved without orders. I moved because I knew what was happening, the human replied. Your people wait for confirmation. Mine learned long ago that waiting gets you killed. You're apex predators. Only on good days. On bad days, we were small primates surrounded by things faster, stronger, and hungrier than us. We survived because we noticed the silence before a pounce, the way wind shifts, the taste of the air before a storm, and we acted. And if you're wrong? Then I look foolish. But I'd rather look foolish than watch people I'm responsible for die. The officer hesitated. You understand this makes people uneasy. Good, the human said, standing. Uneasy people stay alive. When they returned to class, no one could quite meet their eyes, not out of fear, but because they now understood. They hadn't just brought a hunter into class. They'd brought a guardian. And guardians are only gentle until you threaten what they protect. If you want, I can now write you a from the alien's perspective version of this same story, which will make the HFY punch hit even harder. That would read like a personal testimony of a student who survived the encounter. Would you like me to do that? All right, here's the alien's perspective retelling, like a personal account from one of the students who lived it. Testimony of Lyarek, Zyril exchange student, the day we met a human. When Professor Thurnick told us we would be studying a living predator, I assumed it was another institute exaggeration. We've studied hollow simulations before, dangerous creatures, yes, but safely behind force fields. Then they brought in the human. It didn't roar, bare teeth, or stalk the room. It just looked at us, and I felt every inch of my skin prickle. Its eyes moved like they were weighing the cost of every breath we took. I asked the question no one else would. If they were so fragile, why were they feared? The smile it gave me still haunts me. We don't need to be built for killing, it said. We think our way to it. The next week, the demonstration came. The human blindfolded itself, told us to hide, and found us all, every single one, in less than a minute. It didn't smell like it was trying. When its hand closed around my arm, it wasn't cruel, but it was final. I understood, in that instant, that if it wanted me gone, there would be nothing I could do. I couldn't sleep for 2 nights after. Then the field trip happened. One moment, we were browsing a market. The next, the human's voice cut through the noise like a plasma blade. Down. I didn't see the attackers until after the human had already moved. The way it launched at them, like gravity had chosen a new direction and was pulling it toward the fight, was terrifying and beautiful. It used a market stall pole like a weapon, knocked one attacker out cold, stole another's gun, and drove the third into retreat before drones even arrived, all while keeping us between cover stalls, away from the line of fire. Later, I learned it had smelled the weapons, smelled them. When it returned from security questioning, no one spoke to it at first, not because we feared it, but because we were ashamed. We had thought we were studying a dangerous animal. What we had been given was something far worse, and far better. Not a predator. A protector. And if the galaxy is wise, it will remember, protector and predator are the same thing. The only difference is who they fight for. If you want, I can now make a short, classified military report on the human's behavior during the market attack written by alien security forces, which would really underline the HFY fear factor. That would make it feel like a debrief file. Alright, here's the classified military report version, straight from Alien Security Archives. Classified, VLAR Prime Security Command, Incident Report 77B. Security Clearance, Level 4 and above. Date, redacted. Location, Lower Market District. Sector 9. Subject, Homo sapiens, Terran origin, exchange student. Institute for Interstellar Harmony. Codename, Hunter. Summary of incident. At approximately 14:32 local time, 3 armed assailants initiated an ambush on an institute student group during an off-campus cultural excursion. Target profile suggests intent to capture or eliminate high-value exchange students for ransom or political leverage. The Terran student, hereafter referred to as the human, identified and responded to the threat before security forces or automated sensors registered hostile intent. The engagement was concluded within 18.7 seconds. Sequence of events. 14 hours 31 minutes and 55 seconds. Subject exhibits abrupt halt in movement. Reported sniffing the air. No obvious threat detected by public security nets at this time. 14 hours 31 minutes and 59 seconds. Subject issues loud verbal command, down, to nearby students. Crowd compliance rate, 92%. 14 hours and 32 minutes. First plasma discharge from rooftop assailant. Subject seizes reinforced stall support pole. Deflects projectile. 14 hours 32 minutes and 4 seconds. Subject advances directly into line of fire. Engages first attacker in melee. Attacker incapacitated via blunt force to thorax. 14 hours 32 minutes and 8 seconds. Subject intercepts retreating second attacker. Performs disarm maneuver. Uses captured weapon against third attacker. Non-lethal strike causes third attacker to lose footing. 14 hours 32 minutes and 12 seconds. Security drones arrive on scene. Threat already neutralized. Subject positions itself between drones and civilian group, indicating protective prioritization over personal safety. 14 hours 32 minutes and 17 seconds. Area secured. No casualties among civilian group. Notable observations. Threat detection. Subject demonstrated pre-attack awareness without access to visual confirmation. Sensory input utilized. Claimed detection via airflow changes and smell of ozone, indicative of charged plasma weaponry. Response time, from initial threat awareness to full neutralization, 17 seconds. Control, subject refrained from lethal force despite clear capability to execute. Risk assessment. Subject's combat potential is disproportionate to physical dimensions and apparent musculature. Psychological profile suggests ingrained threat anticipation and preemptive action without reliance on external orders. Recommendation: treat all Terran nationals as high-risk/high-value assets. They may serve as exceptional protective agents or catastrophic threats, depending on allegiance. Final note. As one officer on scene stated, it didn't just fight them, it hunted them in the middle of a crowd and never took its eyes off the people it was protecting. That's the part that scares me. Report filed by CMDR, Vralik Tornesh, Vlar Prime Security Command. If you want, I can now do a final epilogue scene where the human is quietly warned by the alien commander that their skill is going to attract unwanted attention from powerful factions. That would set up a sequel perfectly. Alright, here's the epilogue scene, setting up a perfect HFY sequel hook. Epilogue, the warning. The debrief room was empty except for the human and Commander Vralik. The walls pulsed faintly with the containment field, but the commander hadn't activated it. Not yet. You're free to go, Vralik said, tail swaying slowly. But you should hear this before you walk out that door. The human leaned back in the chair, one eyebrow raised. Sounds ominous. It is. The commander placed a datapad on the table and slid it forward. The screen displayed grainy stills from the market incident, the human mid-strike, mid-dodge, mid-protective block. Every frame radiated lethal intent. These images are already circulating in closed military networks, Vralik said. You've demonstrated a capability that many will covet or fear. The human glanced at the screen and shrugged. I just did my job. That's the problem, Vralik said, voice low. To you, that was nothing. To them, that was a weapon they can't buy, can't replicate, can't predict. And every intelligence agency in 3 sectors is about to add you to their watch lists. The human was silent for a moment, then asked, and you? What list do you put me on? Vralik's frill rippled, the Drakari equivalent of a sigh. That depends on who you decide you protect next. Remember, human, the line between guardian and threat is thin. The galaxy will watch which side you stand on. The humans stood, slinging their satchel over one shoulder. If they're smart, they said, they'll hope I'm on their side. They left without looking back. Vralik sat alone in the hum of the room, staring at the still images. He'd seen warriors, assassins, and soldiers before, but never one who moved like that. It wasn't training alone, it was instinct. And instincts can't be unlearned. If you want, I can make the next story where an alien faction tries to recruit or abduct the human after this warning. And the situation spirals into a full HFY political thriller meets combat story. That's where things could get very intense. Alright, here's the sequel opening where the warning proves true and factions make their move. Part 1, The Offer. The human had been back at the Institute for less than a week before the first accident happened. It was late evening, the corridors empty except for the faint hum of cleaning drones. They were heading back from the gym when a shadow stepped into the path ahead, tall, broad, wrapped in a cloak that shimmered faintly in the low light. Hunter, the figure said, voice smooth but carrying a strange weight. The human slowed, one hand resting casually in their pocket, the other free at their side. That's not my name. It's what you are, the figure replied, and that's why I'm here. My employers have taken an interest in you. The human kept walking, forcing the cloaked one to match their pace. Let me guess, they saw the market footage. Of course, 3 armed hostiles down in under 20 seconds. Blindfolded prey location in training exercises. Protective prioritization under fire. You're wasted in a classroom. They stopped at an intersection, glancing down each hall. Empty. No cameras in this section. The human didn't like that. Let me guess, they said. You want to hire me. To protect, the figure said, smiling faintly, or to remove. The pay is the same, depending on the target. The human's eyes narrowed just enough to show they understood exactly what was being offered. I don't do removals. The smile widened. Everyone says that, in the beginning. Something in the tone set alarms ringing in the human's instincts. Not a threat yet, but the smell of one just upwind. They stepped closer, lowering their voice. You've got 5 seconds to walk away before I decide you're testing me. The cloaked figure didn't move at first, then gave a slow, almost mocking bow. Very well, but others will come, Hunter, and not all will offer credits before they take what they want. The figure stepped back, vanishing into the corridor's dim corners. The human stayed still for a moment, listening. The air currents shifted, the faint echo of footsteps fading. They already circling. the human thought. And somewhere deep inside, an old survival instinct stirred. They weren't prey. They weren't predator. They were both, and the hunt was about to start again. If you want, I can continue straight into part 2, where the first abduction attempt happens, giving the human a chance to show exactly why taking them alive is a terrible idea. Would you like me to roll into that next?